Mimic, are you trying to talk? Yes, we can hear you, okay? The volume seems to be all around similar. Okay, Ishmaru, you're the only voice I haven't heard, Ishmaru. Hello, Ishmaru, if you're trying to talk, we cannot hear you. Yeah. Oh, I already added it to the queue. Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's what I did. Ishmaru is still not there. At all, no, yeah. Yes, now we can. Alright, so the levels of the microphone seems to all be on the same time. I mean, more or less the same level. Okay, the stream is up now, but they cannot hear us anything. Everything is on mute. There's just video and music. So if you want to start sharing the link around, you can do that. And here's how it's gonna go. Like the other one, we made Fangames panel number 2. I'm going to act as MC, so to speak. I'm going to go around first, doing a round of introduction. So we introduce everyone and briefly what we've been working on, what are our projects and stuff, and then we go into the discussion. I'll try to do it in steps, and only thing we have to talk about what happened today at Anime Expo with you know. Go. Sorry. Okay, alright, because my microphone is not... Okay, that's funny. Okay, you could hear just me talking to the air, but not anymore. And we are live. Good evening, night, afternoon, morning, anything, everywhere, wherever you are. Good day to everyone. I'm Enoskine, back on this stream, on this channel. Last time was for the Fun Game number 2 panel. And tonight we have a special, very special, well, for more than one thing, a very special stream. And joining me today for discussing the subject of the RWBY game, there were supposed to be 4 actually other developers in the stream, but one had to pull out at the last moment due to an emergency. JJ Base, JJ21. So sorry, man, that you had to pull out at the last moment, but it is what it is. But joining me, there is 3 other people, and I'm gonna go around and introduce them, let them introduce themselves one by one. Starting from the top left of the screen, we have Ishmaru. Hello, say hi. Wait a moment, I don't think I can hear you. One moment. Okay, try now.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Ishmaru.
Yes,
I'm the creator.
there we go.
Okay, great. I'm the creator of RWBY Hunters of Vale. I've been developing games for well over 10 years now, mostly real-time strategy games. And I've been working on RWBY, which is a fighting beat 'em up for the past 3 years. So it's good to meet y'all.
All right, good. And that's number 1. Glad to have you on the scene, Ishmaru. And we should probably mention, though, that we are also 2 of the main organizers of the entire Summer of RWBY thing. in case people notice the nickname from the Discord and start asking questions.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
One more thing too about me.
Go.
I'm also the co-founder of the RWBY Fangame wiki. We've been kind of slowly collecting data on all the released fan games and one's currently in development. So we do that. We also have a Discord server to support, people who want to create games. So. All
right. Great stuff. All right, then top right we have Selekar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Can you hear us? Can they hear you?
Yeah, I can hear you, Manos.
All right. Good evening, man, or good afternoon. So introduce yourself.
Okay, so hey there, everyone. I'm Selekar, and I'm developing right now RWBY Requiem, which is a 3D ARPG. It still isn't published yet, but I expect to get that thing ready soon.
Okay.
I am a professional developer, and I also develop games on my free time.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And last but not least of the trio, well, I guess I'm the last because it would be second to last for anyone else. But anyway, I don't know how to count, I guess. Okay, Mimicry, it's your turn now.
Hey everyone, I am the creator of RWBY Crystal, and yeah, that's about it. I make a bunch of RWBY Crystal's design as like a retelling of RWBY volumes 1 to 3, and in a turn-based RPG fashion. Outside of that, I do graphic design, and I work on other games as well. You can find me on itch.io, and currently I'm in the process of moving all the stuff to another engine. So, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I feel you. I had to try that once myself. Not easy. Okay, and last but not least, it's me, Manos Kain. I am the creator of the JPD Fun game series, JPD 1 Sonata of Fire, and JPD 2 Adagio of Darkness so far. I started doing this 8 years ago in 2016. Oh my god. That was the summer that the ending of Volume 3 came out. And I started doing the games because my favorite character is Penny Polendina, and you can imagine why I was feeling about making fan games, if you remember what happened in Volume 3, don't you? So yeah, been doing this for 8 years, and we still keep on going, keep on tracking, and I can't wait to bring you more good stuff like that in the future. And speaking of good stuff, today we are going to be discussing the elements of what makes the dream RWBY game. And we'll see what comes out, because maybe each one of us has a different type of game in mind. Maybe we have all different preferences, ways of how we approach game making, even different engines. I don't know. So we'll see what comes out. I'm pretty curious of how the stream will develop. But before all of that, we need to address the elephant in the room. Maybe some people have already heard, or maybe they have not heard, that Kerry Shawcross and Barbara Dunkelman were from RWBY, which, one of the creators and voice actors for Yang Xiaolong. They were at Anime Expo, and they made an announcement that RWBY has found a new home, a new buyer. And that buyer is Viz Media. For those who don't know, Viz Media is basically, how do I explain this? You know how manga and anime are mostly made in Japan? So when they need to be translated and, distributed in another country, they need a distributor partner, the Japanese companies, and Viz Media is pretty much the biggest distributor in the United States. They distribute pretty much 90% of the manga and the graphic novels and anime that you see in the United States. And the thing is, though, that to my memory, I did a little research. They did some original manga, but they never produced any original animation so far. And that was a surprise because it is a pretty big name, but they never done anything like this before. The closest thing they did was producing the Death Note live action, and we all know how that turned out. So that's what is happening. We don't have any further information about what this means for the series or what's going to come in the future with new volume or anything. So I like to know what you guys think about this development, starting with reverse order. Selekor, what do you think about this new RWBY development?
Oh, well, I have been researching for a little while.
Okay.
Right when we got the news about it. And as you said, they are mainly tasked with publishing different anime and manga, so they don't have a lot of history with original media. But we asked around on the Fangame server, and they told us they aren't like too concerned about fan projects or works. Like, they don't help them, but they also don't harm them. So it's like, it's an okay enough deal.
Yeah, that's actually a good point because it is a different owner now. Warner Brothers, like Rooster Teeth, was pretty hands off. So I guess a worry could have been like, what does this mean for fan games and fan projects? But it seems that Viz Media is kind of live and let live kind of owner. Yeah, Selekor?
Yeah. I mean, it's very good for RWBY. That means we'll get a volume 10, but there still isn't anything public about the copyright things.
So I guess while there are still a few things that need to be hammered down, I guess, and it seems like the video you gave me, Shmaru, is a bit lower resolution. So look at that. Okay, Ishmaru, what do you think about the acquisition by of Viz Media, of RWBY by Viz Media?
Oh well, I'm okay with it. Like, it was certainly unexpected. Like, of all the possible ones we were all thinking of in our head, this was definitely not even in the top 10.
Oh, absolutely not. Just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise. But if they have published the anthology series of RWBY, so at least it's someone who has some experience with it. In regards to how they feel about fan games, I too was looking at the copyright, and we kind of got spoiled a little bit with Rooster Teeth because the way that they had in their content uses guidelines was they basically had a clause that explains what you can or can't do.
Yep.
Basically meaning, like, as long as you follow the rules, you can make fan work. Whereas Viz Media is more or less like they tell you what you cannot do, which is specifically you can't sell any of this. So it doesn't specifically say that we're essentially protected, but it doesn't say that they're necessarily going to go after us either. So it's kind of like a legally gray area. But all things considering, I mean, it's not the worst case scenario. And they even have a little section on their main page for fan artwork. So there's that. I mean, the anthology series itself was essentially a bunch of fan art that they put together to make the comics. A lot of famous RWBY fan artists did these comics.
Oh, I had no idea. Okay.
So I'm hopeful for that.
Okay, if you have that the link to this page, why don't you share it in the chat or the stream? I think maybe people will be interested to read through it, as it is kind of you know, kind of something that I think people are probably gonna look at more closely, because I guess Ruby may be a small fan base, so like it's still a niche IP, but it has a very strong fan base, and there is a lot of creators in the fan base, and that is unusual, especially for something of this size. The proportions, the percentages are skewed, which is very interesting. So I think people may be interested in reading those kind of guidelines. And mimicry. What about you? What do you think?
Well, I think Viz Media is going to be pretty okay. I mean, they're probably just going to treat fan games like any other company treats fan games.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't really too worried about it too much. Uh, it's kind of weird. I would disagree that it's in a legal gray zone. I mean, given the way that the copyright system works, like all fan works are technically illegal. I mean, but it's bad PR to shut that shut that
Yeah.
down. I forgot it. The landmark case was with that a street artist versus 20th Century Fox over The Simpsons. That made
Yeah.
that case to show that, hey, yeah, that was like, oh yeah, you can't be drawing fan works and selling them on the street. You know, like when you draw like a T-shirt or stuff like that and give it to someone, and they say you can't do that, and then a 20th Century Fox, they got so much bad PR, they dropped the suit. So as it is
Yeah.
legally in the United States, it is illegal to make fan works, but it's bad PR, and it's. I think it has really no bearing on whether we are going to be able to do fan works or not. The most I even consider with Viz is going to be basically editorial interference with with the show itself. You know, Viz, you know, if they want to be hands-on or not, but I don't think much is going to change.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah, that sounds pretty likely what is gonna be like, especially if you think that, as you said, going after fan creators, fan stuff is extremely bad PR, and honestly, there is only one company that I can think of that does that regularly without any repercussion whatsoever on the sales and everything, and that is Nintendo. Nintendo goes after fan creators regularly all the time, but they never get any repercussions for it, which honestly it's a bit of a pet peeve for me, and that's why I don't really like them as a company that much. It's good that I'm not really a fan of their games, because I would be so conflicted otherwise about getting any of them. Like, remember, there was a case that they shut down. Remember when they started wanting to come after people were making YouTube reviews and about their games, and they wanted huge percentages of their earnings? Remember
Yeah,
that?
it was the partnership program.
Yeah.
The Nintendo partnership program.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Nintendo is a litigious company. Yeah,
Still is.
Nintendo is. I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, they're a litigious company. I think it's just that certain companies could get away with it because it's sort of like the childhood grasp. Because another company that is just like Nintendo that can get away with it. Well, they get worse PR than Nintendo because you know they're seen as sort of like an evil company, but you know you have all those huge devoted fans that allow them to get away with murder, and that's Disney. Disney's about the same
of course,
level of
Disney. You're right. Although that armor is getting, and even the earnings are getting a bit. Well, this is not a subject of the screen, but the thing is, because of the huge multi-billion-dollar acquisitions that they've done in the last decade, they're starting to feel the heat as well. But anyway, returning to video games, and returning to the subject of the stream, we are here to talk about our dream RWBY game, and wow. Well, maybe who knows? Maybe this time with this media is a very old company. I think they were established in the 70s. I read about it a little bit earlier. They were established in the 70s by a Japanese immigrant in the US, in San Francisco, and they basically became the first and biggest and de facto publisher of manga and anime in the US. And I want to guess that they have more experience in multimedia publishing. So who knows? Maybe one day one of will have some some RWBY games that do not. Let's just say that they do not disappoint. Who knows? But the dream RWBY game, and where do we even start? Okay, I don't even want to start with genre. Let's start from something simple. 2D or 3D. Okay, it's like the basics. We go to the basics. Do we go 2D? Do we go 3D? An amalgam, a mix of it. What kind of style do you think would fit RWBY best if you had to put it in a video game? Like a 2D, 3D, or some kind of hybrid. Let's start with Ishmaru, because it's his game that is on the screen right now. And Ishmaru, if you think of a RWBY game, what do you think? What kind of images, what kind of art style goes in your head?
So, at least from my experience, you can see my game is a two-dimensional game, and I went with two-dimensional specifically for the ease that when I started this project, I was working solo. But if we're talking about a dream game, I definitely know that based on the reactions I've seen from people, that if it's going to be an action game, it would definitely need to be into 3D space. Most definitely.
Uh-huh.
I mean, with 2D is great for trying to go for either retro vibes. It's good for trying to make a simplest UI. It's good for going with maybe on mobile or something like that. But if you want a larger scale kind of game, and I think the big point that I was going to try to make is 3D really offers a sense of scale, and it offers a sense of exploration given the right kind of genre. And I think those are the two biggest things that people really want. They want to explore the world of Remnant. They want to go places outside of Vale. They want to go to, because we have all sorts of beautiful locations in RWBY. We have, we have Emerald Forest, we have Forever Fall, and even crazier places like Volume 9's Ever After, or that really cool, I can't remember the name of the lake, but the lake that I think it was Volume 5 where Weiss was getting a flight over where she was attacked by the Lancers with all the floating gravity crystals. This is some really incredible locations that people want to see. So in that regard, I think 3D it's a lot of work, but 3D is definitely the way to go for that.
Okay, Selacor, what are your thoughts on that? Anything to add or comment?
Yeah, I basically think the same as Ishmael. However, I think that for some of the game's story, it will be actually better to have a 2D approach to it. Like, for example, some of the 3D games do have little cutscenes in them, but I honestly prefer them in 2D. They have more details. They look more expressive than in 3D. And yeah, that's what I think will fit. 3D for the environment, the characters, the gameplay. But for the story, I think 2D approach may be interesting to see.
Okay, Mimicry, your opinion on that?
I think I'll take a counterpoint. 2D or 3D, it really kind of depends on the it depends on the audience that you're courting. Like, if I was going for an older audience, it could be 2D. If I was going for the younger audience, I mean, there are a lot of young kids that wouldn't touch 2D with a 10-foot pole. And then on top of that, like action games, you can use like you can do 2D with an action game, and you can do 3D with an action game. It all depends on what you're trying to get at. Because we have 2D games like Streets of Rage. That's 2D.
Oh
That's
yeah.
pretty actiony. And you have what is it? The TMNT Shredder's Revenge. That's 2D also. And I think
That
Ruby would fit very nicely in that kind of environment. You know, four
wasn't
players all at once.
wasn't that like the style that they went to with the last Ruby game that came out, RFL? Wasn't that like a brawler in 2D?
Mm-mm.
It
No?
was more of a brawler, but it almost felt like they did not know, like that there was some kind of interference going on, because yeah, it was a brawler like Streets of Rage, where you go, you stop, you clear the screen and then continue. But then it also
Okay.
had this kind of like search action kind of vibe, which didn't meld well with it because you weren't really exploring. It was just like from screen to screen to screen in a direct 2D instead of a 2D isometric kind of space.
Huh.
So
Okay.
like where Streets of Rage is like 2D isometric, whereas Arrowfell is just a 2D platformer kind of space. If you wanna give a better example of a Ruby game that does 2D well, even though the assets are 3D renders, like sort of like Donkey Kong 3D renders, that would be the Chinese mobile game for Ruby.
uh, I know of it. I even made a video about it, but I never really actually seen it in action. It's no longer available anyway. So it's the company died, I think.
I think
So
they
what
just
was
lost
it?
the license of it.
Yeah. Okay, no, because I remember when I made the video about the Ruby games that have been released. Most of the companies who release games, the games were taken off, but also a lot of those companies died. I don't remember which ones, of course, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I disconnected
Happens.
by
Uh,
mistake. Yeah.
anyway, so that is
But
a good. Those are some good points. Yeah, of course, if you want to explore, you need. I guess 3D is more for it, but I want to give a counterpoint there because. And I want to make an example of a game exactly that does 2D exploration, although it's and fighting, although it's full 2D because it's actually 3D. But you know, have you played Hades? One or two?
yeah, 2D isometric, the 2D isometric action game. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and it's full 2D because they're actually 3D models, but they're with the camera. They fake there is 2D isometric, and the action in those games is very very good. It's snappy, it's crispy. There is chaos, but you control it and you get better. So there is a way to do to the action game, and there is also an exploration side to it, although not as strong because it's a bunch of connected let's say a bunch of connected room basically because it's a roguelite brawler. But I think that maybe that kind of style could work for exploration of locations, which you know, it's 3D but it's presented as 2D, so it's kind of a hybrid. So I guess that is another option. But Ishmael brings on yeah, please.
Oh yeah. I was saying. I think I'm on a bit of a delay, so I apologize for that. Um, I'm not sure if I cut out before I said this, but I was saying a good
Yeah.
example of a 2D isometric game that uses 3D models, like Donkey Kong pre-rendered 3D models, is the Chinese RWBY game. That game is a 2D action game.
No, we heard that. We heard that
Very
earlier.
much in. Oh, okay, yeah. So, also, when you were saying about 3D being exploration, yeah, Hades is also explorative as well. But I also think that if Ruby Arrowfell actually committed to the search action game, like Symphony of the Night or any kind of or Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, like the Castlevania kind of games,
Okay, so you're talking
it
about
also work in its
Metroidvanias,
favor.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate that term.
Yeah, but
I just
that's
use the
what.
Japanese term search action because I think it just fits better.
Okay, but I guess most people know know it as Metroidvanias. Okay, so when you say search action, you think of the Metroidvania genre, basically. Okay, so on that note, because now we're talking less about 2D and 3D and more we're talking about the genre and things to do and okay, so in that case, we had to ask the Dream Ruby game. So the Dream Ruby game for you is something that mixes action and exploration, you say. But okay, I'm gonna start from Selecor this time. Can I ask why? Like, why do you think? Okay, combat, of course, because Ruby is pretty much a combat anime. That's what it started as. So of course, people expect to be able to replicate the fighting that happens in the series in a game. So that is expected. But why exploration? Like, let's start with you, Selecor. Why do you think that a Ruby game, a Dream Ruby game, needs exploration? Exploration of what? Let's start with that.
Okay, so first of all, I think that Ruby world and lore is fascinating. Like you have the relics, which are kind of like a fairy tale. You have big monsters and terrible villains that could easily be boss battles on their own areas. You also have enemies that appear on only some kingdoms. That feeling of trying to find new things, new enemies, new relics to collect is something that I find enticing about exploration, and Ruby has a lot of it. Also, the Ruby lore is good in theory, but it's not very well constructed on the show, on my opinion. So I think that works in our favor for creating our own world.
Don't I know it? Don't I know it? Yeah, but that's the thing, though. The point I want to make, because as you said, the lore in Ruby as a concept on a very base level is a lot of interesting ideas, but it's not very well constructed on the show itself. To the point that half of the work that I had to do on JPDE, both the first one, especially the second one, is had to been to connect the dots and fill the void. But the thing is, you're talking about lore and story and stuff like that, but you don't need an exploration mechanic. That kind of stuff can be explored in many ways in a game. Like, you don't need to you can do it with dialogue, you can do it I don't know, a Phoenix Wright style kind of game. You can you don't necessarily need an exploration kind you don't need the areas to explore lore and background. So
I know, but exploration is kind of the most immersive way of exploring those topics.
Is it?
In my opinion. Yeah.
I kind of agree. I kind of agree with him in a sense because, for example, one of the biggest games right now is Dark Souls, and by extension, Elden Ring, and all of those Souls like, and a lot of what gets, and then you can also consider, even with Breath of the Wild, The Legend of Zelda, those games, what draws a lot of people to that is not necessarily the lore that you can get from dialogue or the lore that you can get from story beats. A lot of the draw, especially in the FromSoft games are the environments. The environments tell a story. You know, imagine being able to walk
Mm-hmm.
into what is it, Mountain Glen, to see like how how the place was actually destroyed. Which wall did they come through? How all of this went to ruin? What's left there? That's all done through environmental storytelling. And you can't really get environmental storytelling unless there's an exploration aspect to the game. If there's no exploration aspect, you can't put the players cannot put the pieces together themselves. So I would actually
Mm.
co-sign on that. I mean, it's not necessary, but I think
No,
it's a
that's the
big
thing.
part of immersing yourself.
No, and that's the thing though, because I need to I'm playing a bit of devil's advocate here because it's interesting. But the thing is, why? Because that's the thing. Because as a personal, I guess, as a person who is not a fan of the FromSoft style of game design, because I played, I tried in order: Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and every single time I play a few hours and then I get bored of it and I do not continue. Because whenever someone tells me, even in other open world games with an exploration thing, there is always the question in the back of my mind where they say, "Oh, you know, you can explore, you can do that, you can do that, you can look how this happened," and the question in my mind is always, "Okay, but why though?" That's the thing. That's the thing. Like, I understand exploration, and and that's fine. Exploration is like a nice mechanic to have. But the thing is it exploration for exploration's sake? Like, is the whole point of the game in your mind exploration and immersion, or is there something else about it? Because there is a lot of people, like I'm an example of for which exploration and challenge by themselves are not really that interesting on their own. What interests me more is like exploration, but for the sake of a story and a narrative. So, maybe that's a good point for. Okay, so what? Because at this point we're talking about the genres and the specific of how the game is designed. Okay, you say exploration, but why and how? Like, how does it fit in the bigger? How do you say? How do you say? Okay, let me put it in order in my mouth before I spit it out. You're talking about wanting to do explore the lore, like a Dark Souls, like as a Soulsborne. That's the name of the genre.
Yeah,
But do you think that RWBY?
environmental storytelling.
Yeah, okay, but do you think that RWBY fits that? Because I don't know if RWBY fits as an IP. It fits that kind of storytelling because RWBY is still an anime. And the thing that makes Bloodborne environmental storytelling, Souls-like environmental storytelling work is that you don't really have a story because most of the story of the big events already happened, and you look at the what came afterwards. But I don't think you can do a RWBY game without having a story because. For me, one of the strengths, maybe the biggest strength of RWBY as an IP is its characters. But if you do the kind of gameplay that Soulsborne has, you can't really have a strong narrative. You can not really have interaction between characters. So there is that issue. How would you see that? How would you solve that?
Would you like to go, Selector?
Well, have you played Genshin Impact, Linus? That game has both of those in it.
No, I have not played Genshin Impact because of first of all, I have categorically, by principle, against anything gacha. I literally did my thesis on video games, and during part of it, I go over how as a design, as games, but the design perspective, as an ethical perspective, they're absolutely one of the worst things that's ever happened to video games as a thing. So no, I haven't played Genshin Impact, and also because from what little I've seen of it, it's not something I enjoy. So no, I haven't played it. So what about Genshin Impact?
Okay, so I think Genshin Impact is a very good example of a game that combines exploration, storytelling, and character interaction. Because I agree with you, I actually don't like Dark Souls games because of the exploration. In fact, I think it's kind of boring to explore Souls games because you do have like some hints, you find some objects, some dead bodies that may tell a story, but they don't really give out like a broader picture of the world. So I think RWBY, in my opinion, I find exploration enticing because of discovering new crazy things that happen in the world, new crazy enemies to fight, crazy weapons that I can find and place on my characters. It's all about discovery.
So discovery for a purpose, basically.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
just...
yeah, that's the core argument.
Hello?
I'm sorry, did it cut out?
And there we go. Now, go.
Yes.
Go.
Yeah. Oh, I was saying, I agree. I think discovery is the core part of being the core part of exploration, and that's what you want to do with it. Yeah, I picked Dark Souls because it's like the most popular, but there are other things. There are other things about it too. I mean, you can also go into another game that does that has a heavy exploration is Metroid Prime in particular. You can
Yes.
discover a lot of the world and a lot of the environments, the ruins, and a lot of the things that happen in that world due to discovery and exploration. And when your question is how does that fit into a RWBY game, the whole concept of hunters and huntresses, that is what would forge you into sort of an exploration situation, to be honest. Like the whole concept of being a huntress, being a hunter. You know?
That is actually a very good, interesting point. Yeah, because you're right. Like as a concept, being a hunter, like it literally implies that you search for something that you need to hunt. In this case, it's a monster. So, like, Monster Hunter. Okay. So yeah, that is actually a good. That's a good idea, and it's a concept that they are touched upon in JPD too. Because, for example, the first arc of the game that now is concluded, as the gang go to Menagerie, and they go. I went with the Australia thing very hard with JPD2, which Menagerie. So there is an outback, and they need to hunt a Grim. So they need to investigate, see where they are, the areas where they appear, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, you think there's something about being a hunting. That's actually a very good point. If you make a good RWBY game, that's actually I think that's actually a very good idea. Make a RWBY game and you make it about hunting. Okay, what? Okay, that is so simple and basic, but I never thought about it like that. Yeah. Hello.
Actually, a core tenet of what is Ruby Crystal that I haven't got to implement yet, but yes, the idea that since they are huntresses and hunters, they're going to go on missions and they're going to look for stuff. I think the closest game that I can remember that I would say has that sort of idea is I don't know if you've ever heard of a game called Uzumaki Chronicles, where
Uzumaki Chronicles, yeah. On the PlayStation 2, I think, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Oh my god. So
yeah.
Oh wow, I had that game. I feel so old. Yeah, yeah. Where you
I
played
know.
Naruto and you had to
Yeah.
make take missions. There was one that was like that you could repeat. That was about spreading flyers, if I remember correctly. Oh my god.
Yeah, bringing fires, getting people's cats, doing dog like these different things, and then you'd have situations where it's like, look, this I need you
Rawr.
to hunt down him and find the Grim. That would be part of the exploration process as being a hunter and huntress.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, it would be a very good idea. It would be very interesting, but it would necessitate a kind of alternate universe, I guess, because if you go with the RWBY canon, there is not a lot of places in the story where that can feasibly happen, because right after Volume 3, like but it's like hunters stop functioning efficiently as anything, and they be hunted down, and the world gets smaller and smaller. Yeah, that is actually another
Yeah,
point that we could...
anthologies.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. The anthologies are still canon, so it would actually fit volumes 1 and 3. So between not yeah, it would fit between volumes 1 and 3. You
Yeah,
would
but would it fit? It fitting, okay, but would it make sense? Because okay, I'm sorry. Here, I'm gonna be a bit
it would
blasphemous.
make sense because remember
There is a lot of stuff. I'm sorry that this thing of the Rooster Teeth. This is one thing that I
I'm
never
sorry.
really.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry. Yeah, so no, it's just that. As I say, there is a bit of a delay. I think. The thing is that the thing with Rooster Teeth that everything is canon, even the things that contradict each other is like yeah, it's a bit confusing. But
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, here these are dream RWBY games, so it doesn't really matter what's canon. It is a dream. We can do whatever we want, I guess.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
would make sense if you're gonna go into the canon. I mean, yeah, the reason why I think that the anthologies and Grim Eclipse still fit into the canon simply because they um avoid placing them what is it, hunkering down an exact timeline. It can happen at any point in those things. And then if you look at volume 2, when they went to go do the missions, right, maybe you wouldn't be able to do it with Team RWBY per se, but it is implied in the show proper that there are several groups of students in Beacon that consistently go out on mission and do huntress stuff
Yeah.
or hunter stuff. So if you were
Which
to, let's say, if you were to have your imaginative RWBY game, and I guess we'll get into that later, but character customization, because I know that's a very big thing in RWBY. If you were to have a unique team already past their first year going out on missions, it would, during the time of volume 1, 2, and before 3, that would be able to fit very neatly and make sense in the events that take place.
Yeah. Aldo, okay. Every now and then you break down mimicry. Ishmaru, maybe? Any thoughts on that?
I have a few thoughts on it.
Go.
But so I wanted to talk about, like, I loved with the. Okay, hang on. Let me get my thoughts together. I apologize.
Okay. Take some notes.
Basically, I'm all for the idea for exploration as in mechanically speaking, because one, not even like just story speaking, but it creates almost, it self-drives you to motivates you, because aside from being given things like quests or a specific objective, it basically leaves you up to basically create your own, and one of the things that made games like Breath of the Wild or Skyrim so popular is to be able to just kind of run off and do your own thing. And I know you guys are just talking about how to fit such a story into canon, but it's almost like, what if
Uh-huh.
what if it's really, we don't need to follow canon, not because any commentary on the canon, but just
Uh-huh.
kind of like, you just kind of, instead of you start off in Beacon, you'd be like, you know what, after this, I'm just going to go fight monsters. I don't want to go through school. Or, you can just kind of basically alter so much of the story with just, or not even follow the story at all. Just kind of create your own adventure as you go along.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I always see brought up when I see discussions on, their dream games is, I want to play my OC, or they want to, and their OC may or may not fit into anything in canon.
No.
So I kind of almost think like, narrative is important, but sometimes you almost don't need to directly tell a story. The story is just, you set up a world and you just let people, almost like a sandbox, and you just unleash the player to either wreak havoc or do good, whatever they want to do, and they make their own story from that.
Oh. I understand the how do you say? I understand. Whoopla. I understand what you're trying to say. Sorry about that. These constantly changing sizes drive me a bit nuts. I understand what you mean by that. But, well, Selekor, any thoughts your own about this?
Sorry, I just got back from a thing I was doing. Which was the question?
No, well, we're having a few discussions about exploration and how to fit it in canon and everything. The whole concept of exploration, how it would fit in RWBY. And it was about like it's because we were talking about how RWBY, one of the strengths of RWBY is its characters. So if you go with something that is full exploration, that wouldn't would it fit? What are your thoughts on that? Okay.
Okay, so first by Okay, so first with exploration, I will try to explore like some of the history of Remnant, like if Remnant is really so dangerous, how come civilization come to exist? Like,
oh yes,
there will be like ruins spread all across Remnant.
Yep.
Exploring those ruins will be very interesting. And also about characters, like RWBY sets like some factions in the world, right? Like the White Fang, the Southern Followers. So it will be interesting to see how they blend in the world. Like, for example, in my game, I have planned like the White Fang taking over some abandoned SNE Dust Company mines and use them as operation bases. So like exploring new locations that may not, that didn't exist in the show but can exist in a game in a reinterpretation of the world, I think will be very fitting for RWBY.
So, well, yeah, okay, I agree with what you say because, like in JPD as well, I've been doing a lot of world building. Like now in JPD 2, I basically went. I'm going into detail on how all the nations work with each other internally, politically. And that is going to become a pretty big point into the main story. How the way that the countries work internally affect how they interact with each other and the overarching threat. How humanity came to evolve despite the threat of the Grim. It's all very interesting stuff that is not really thought about or touched upon in the original show. And so I guess what we're trying to say here, I mean, maybe in different ways, but it seems to me that we agree that to make a dream RWBY game, we need to somehow reinterpret canon, like the lore and the background. We need to modify it, reinterpret it, expand it in some way. It cannot be left
I don't necessarily
virgin.
I don't necessarily think that you need to reinterpret canon. I mean, I am sort of doing that with Crystal, but the idea of Crystal is to keep The idea of Crystal is to keep everything as vanilla as possible.
Uh,
But explain a lot of the things. But explain or expand upon the things that are not in the show. For example, that you talk about the White Fang and racism and all
uh-huh.
that sort of stuff that goes on in Remnant, right? The show itself does not show the racism that happens, but the characters do behave as if stuff goes on. So in a game, what you would actually have to do is, and it would add to the exploration aspect. In the games, what you'd have to do is actually expand on what the show does not show. So like the areas like go
Okay, but
when you're going through towns, areas that yeah, when you're going through towns, areas that you may not have been in the show that are there that do showcase the things that the show talks about.
okay, but
You
that
don't
there's a
necessarily have to. Oh, sorry.
no, I understand what you say,
Yeah,
but there is an issue there. Basically, what you're saying, it's basically you're turning RWBY into Star Wars. You have this entire world, and it gets limited to the same 3 decades. Because you have to respect what is happening in canon. And at that point, either you go very far in the past or very far in the future. Because this had happened to me while developing JPDE. When I was starting to develop JPDE, I was trying to respect RWBY canon as much as possible and do my thing in the background. Now it's on the screen, people can probably see what I mean by that. But I think is that at a certain point, as I got more ambitious with the story and the background stuff, there came a point, okay, if I want to do this, and I want to do this because I like the story that I'm telling, I like the game that I'm creating, I need to go against the canon. So at a point, you need to choose, do you want to respect the sanctity of RWBY canon, or do you want to do your own thing that you like? Like, for example, now on the screen there is Penny kissing Ruby in Nuts and Dolls. If I respect the RWBY canon, I could have never done that. So, do you want that, or do you want to respect the sanctity of the canon? At some point, you need to make that choice.
I mean, yeah, you definitely do to need to make a choice on whether you're gonna keep canon or not. I mean, and it all depends on the person, because there are people that for the ideal RWBY game, they would want you to respect canon. They wouldn't want any kind of diversions. And then for other people, the ideal RWBY game would be what if scenarios that happen. What if Penny didn't go away? What if Pyrrha was still alive? You know, people do like their fantasies as well. So it's kind of a toss up. I think easy way to get away from that is to drop a storytelling game altogether and maybe be something like a fighting game, because a fighting game you'd be able to have your cake and eat it too. With both canonical situations and non-canonical situations. And because it's a fighting game, there's no what is it, expectation or adherence to say, okay, this is the way it should go, because fighting games tend to be the best of both worlds.
Wow.
I kind of agree
Until
with
sequels, of course.
Go.
No, I was going to say, like, I do agree with Mimicry with, because there is a divide that there are some people who kind of want to take the core foundation RWBY and do something completely new with the story, and then there's some people who really just want to play out the events of it. If you really want to just avoid that, the best solution would be a game to go kind of in between, where it's kind of where it doesn't really matter if you're following or not, and a fighting game would do that. My only complaint about a straight fighting game, and this is someone who's kind of borderline fighting, beat 'em up, is there is, and I've noticed this issue kind of come up with people who've tried my game. Fighting games are really technical. Like, you really, to get into that genre, you really have to it's a hard learning curve, and for people who are uninitiated, or just generally want to casually play a game, it can be quite frustrating for them to get into. Like,
Yeah.
I do agree, a fighting game would be very fun, but it would definitely limit the people who can play it. And I know it came up way long ago when you were talking before about Aerofell. If you ever saw the early footage of Aerofell, like I think the 2021 trailer, it was actually a very slightly different game. It was more closer to a beat 'em up where it has combos and things like that, and all that was eventually stripped out of the game. And I think
Oh wow.
the reasoning for that was because it made it too complicated. They wanted to simplify it for more casual players. I think they were trying to go for more reach, so the end result was a little bit more. For me personally, like, I wouldn't even say it's like Shantae. It reminds me a lot of like Mega Man personally. It kind of has this like retro SNES style platforming game. Because there's no combos. You just tap the A button and you slash, and that's really all it was. You have your shoot, and then you have your semblance, and that's basically it for everything. So now, I'm not going to go into whether that was a good or a bad decision, but that I think they did it specifically to make the game more open for anyone to play it. Because I have that issue where people who want to play my game, but they say it's too difficult, or it's just you have to have the kind of mindset to. And if you want to make a straight fighting game, which is even more technical,
yeah,
it's you not really limit your player base.
I'd push back on that a little bit because it all depends on your audience and how accessible you want to make it. Yeah, sure, fighting games do deter people, but just because of the nature of them being fighting games. But you have easily accessible fighting games. Like, I mean, one of the biggest ease of access fighting games is Smash Brothers. People will jump into that game very easily because it appears simple. Yeah, the skill ceiling is really high, but the bar for entry is really low, and you can do some nifty stuff to play. So if you were to make a RWBY fighting game and you were trying to get as much people as possible, you might take the Smash Brothers approach, or you might take the Dragon Ball Z Fighters approach, where you can do flashy stuff with very limited amount of button presses. So
true, but okay, I need to push back on your pushback a little bit, and then we hear what Selekor wants to wants to say. The thing is that okay, because here now we're going from the design of the game, the genre of the game, we're going into the appeal, like the audience levels and that. There is an issue with the examples that you made, and I speak as someone who my degree is in marketing, so like I have a bit of both words here. You're talking about Smash Brothers and Dragon Ball Z Fighters. I can assure you that even if they're relatively accessible with their controls, because there are fighting games that are harder to get into, absolutely, but they are still a learning curve, both for fighters and for Smash Bros. Even at the beginning, they're not intuitive, so to speak. There are still some combination of buttons, there is timing and everything, so they are a bit technical. The mass appeal of Smash Brothers comes from the fact that its playable characters are some of the biggest IPs of the history of video games. And Dragon Ball Z Fighters is based on literally the most well-known globally, the most famous anime of all time in the entire world. So to the appeal, there is also there is also that aspect to the appeal. It's not just the fact that you can get into it or not. There is a lot of stuff that goes into how can I get people to play my game, and so like there is also that aspect to consider. Like RWBY is not that famous of a thing that people will get into a fighting game of any kind just on the strength of its IP. So there is that.
Wait, are we talking about just a question? Because
Oh.
I think this is a question. Are we talking about gaining access from outside? Or are we talking about are we talking about gaining access from outside, or are we talking gaining access for the fan base? Because if we're just talking about making the ideal game for the fan base, then what the character appeal doesn't matter at this point. It is, the fan base already knows the characters, and that's what they're here for. But if we're
That's a
talking
good
about
point.
making the ideal fan game in general to get mass appeal, then yeah, you would have to consider those things like character roster and stuff like that.
It's a
It's
bit
the difference.
tomato, because even in RWBY fans, what is the overlap of fighting games and RWBY fans, fighting game fans and RWBY fans? Because I don't think that that all RWBY fans, I don't think that we all have different kind of projects. I have a JRPG visual novel. Ishmaru has fighting games. I don't think that all games are played, but all RWBY fans just because they're RWBY fans. There is still a matter of preference in video games.
That's true. I think the only people that the overlap would be any RWBY fan that is interested in a RWBY action game would try a RWBY fighting game.
True. Selekor,
Yeah.
with your thoughts about this?
I don't really know. I just do. I'm just guiding myself by what I want to do, and that's all. For all intents and purposes, what I'm doing is a development suicide because my game is way too big to create for a small team.
Oh,
So,
yes. Oh,
kind
the
of-
scope creep.
Yeah. So I kind of don't care
love
about
that
those
scope
things
creep.
anymore. I just try to complete my game, and that's all.
Okay. Does anyone as everyone? Okay, actually, this maybe this. Let me ask this question: has everyone here experienced scope creep with their projects?
Oh, always.
Yes.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's totally pretty. That's totally a good point to go into. Okay, maybe that's a very good point to go into next. Just it's been an hour, guys. Do you want to take a break?
I can
Yes
go.
or no?
I don't mind either way.
Yeah, I can keep going.
All right. Then let's keep going. This time, let's talk about scope creep. For those who are not familiar with the term, scope creep, when it comes to game design, is when you start from a very small little project, like, oh, I'm gonna make this very simple adventure game. But then, okay, what if I want to add some point and click section where you need to explore certain points, and for that, oh wait, what if I had NPC and then those NPCs you can talk to them, discover their secrets, and then discovering the secrets you unlock. So basically, it's when you start small and all of a sudden you start working on something completely out of the scope of the original project, and sometimes it gets so big that you are basically in hot water and you have no one to blame but yourself. To give an example, although when I started JPD at the beginning, it was just going to be like a simple visual novel, as I say, a linear one. I just wanted to tell a story where Penny got a team and a boyfriend and friends, etc., 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 that kind of stuff. But then I started adding stuff to it. I started adding a fighting system, and then I added the dating sim mechanics, like Persona 4, and then I started adding more and more stuff, a lot of which wasn't completed because I eventually just it was insane. I learned my lesson with JPD 2, and it's more constrained. I already know the scope limit and working with those limits, but when I was going through it at the beginning, because I only started making games when I started doing JPD 1, so I was learning about it, and that was What about you, Ishmaru? What's your scope creep story?
Well, let me start with clarifying something at least from my experience, that there's kind of like two types of scope creep. There's like an
Yes.
internal one, and there's
Okay.
external scope creep. One, the
Oh.
internal is the scope creep you do to yourself because you kind of come up with new ideas and you want to keep pushing the boundary. And that one, is kind of your own fault. You kind of hurt your project. But then there's also
Yes.
external scope creep, where one, it's either your fans or people who play your game suggest and push back, or it's more like you witness similar projects implementing things that make you feel like you're compelled to mimic that because, like, well, they're doing it, I need to have it in mind too.
Yes.
And scope creep is really, it can end projects. Like, I consider myself fairly good at restraining myself with scope creep, but even then I have functionality that I spent months working on that I probably wouldn't have added if I didn't feel compelled to put it in there. And I can't even fully say if it was worthwhile or not, but I spent the past year alone working on optimizations to my game. I have not been able to put out any actual content for the game in over a year. All of it went to basically having to restructure the entire engine to.
Oh my god.
Because some people, because the original scope of my game was basically wasn't supposed to be no story. It was literally just supposed to be kind of like a more 2D version of, I wouldn't say 2D Grim Eclipse, but basically the idea is like a survival. You just survive as long as you can, and you get scored, and you're compelled to kind of get better. Kind of like what the original, the original fan game version of Grim Eclipse was.
Okay.
Because I didn't really consider myself a writer. I didn't really, so I just didn't want to touch that. But I kind of, working on just that, I kind of saw what all the other projects. There's a lot of RPG Maker and, of course, the RenP visual novels like JPDE that are very story based.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt that I could see the popularity. Like, we're talking about popular genres of me making the Fangame wiki. You can really see how much a vast majority of our fan games are either RPGs or visual novels, and there's a reason for that. So I kind of felt compelled that, okay, my game needs a story now. And for me, that was very, very difficult to do. So having to add all the visual novel elements, having to do now new backgrounds, new images, animate certain sections, I found myself multiplying the amount of sprites that I had to incorporate into the game, which then really bogged it down.
Yeah.
I got 3 chapters into my game before some people are like, hey, I can barely play this game. It's a slideshow. And for an action game, that's awful. So I had to spend an entire, because I was at RTX 2023 and I was actually I got to show the game to certain people. I don't know if Carrie actually played it, but I actually handed my card with the game on it with a QR code to Carrie Shawcross. I did to Neith. Neith did play it. And then it was really great. And I wanted to immediately jump into chapter 4 right after. And that's when we started having people noticing the drop in lag. It came unplayable for certain people. And it took me a whole year to redo everything to make it work.
Yeah. For me, it's for me happened as well. But for me, it was the opposite in the sense that I started as a visual novel, and at first, what I want to do with fight scenes was just do it as with certain visual novels did, that they present a choice in the middle of the narration, and then that choice tells you how the fight is going. I'm doing a lot of air quotes here. But then I realized, people, I like JRPGs, people like JRPGs, Persona is popular, so turn-based is popular again, maybe I can do a turn-based. There is just a problem. Back in 2000, I started this in 2016, and in 2017 I decided I wanted to add a turn-based fighting system. I have only acquired enough knowledge and experience to make a incompetent fighting system in RWBY, in Python, last year. So you can imagine how like the fact that the fighting system on the original JPD was shit has become a meme now. It is terrible. It's one of the main reasons that I'm remastering the first game, because the fighting system in the second game is much better. Like it's even like day and night. But when it happened, when I first put it in, it was scope creep, because RWBY needs to have a fighting system, and I can do a turn-based system. No, I could not do a turn-based system. But then there is the fact that if I hadn't tried to put in a fighting system, maybe I would have never learned to make one competently. So there is also that one, because I think one of the things that for making fun games, fun everything, one of the advantages that no one thinks of is that it's an opportunity to learn without having too much pressure or responsibility on you, like if you were in an actual indie or AA studio making games. You don't really have, especially in today's climate, how the industry works, you don't have the luxury to just screw around like this anymore. You need to do it in your own time.
I agree.
Yeah. Mimicry, what about it? Sorry, go.
No, I was just gonna say that scope creep is great for pushing your boundaries and doing things you may not normally be comfortable doing. So that's actually a positive outcome of it. Scope creep is not bad in and of itself. It really just gets bad when basically you end up just keep adding and adding and adding and adding and adding to the point at which it never comes out. Nope. And eventually the game gets canceled because you lose interest because you just worked on it so long and you have no fan base because no one's going to wait forever for version 1 to come out. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, yes. Okay, Mimicry, what is your scope creep story?
My scope creep story is actually one of the reasons why I'm switching engines, because there are certain things that I know that people would like to do with the turn-based systems, and just systems in general when it comes to a turn-based system in RWBY, and just minor stuff like being able to walk in all 8 directions instead of the Pokemon 4. So that's one thing. And then the next thing that I know the biggest part of my scope creep is since I'm trying to be faithful to the source material, and since the source material it has more holes than Swiss cheese, I have to constantly accommodate for a lot of the missing substances in the show. So it's like, okay, well, I wrote this, but now this has this plot hole here, so you have to write this and you have to write this. It's a lot of corrections and a lot of things that you can do. A lot of things that you have to look into. And I gave myself a slight out in because I knew it was going to be too big, so I gave myself kind of a slight out, because the game also allows you to create your own story by making non-canon decisions. So doing that would change the outcomes of certain things if you know what you're doing.
Like a 7th stand user. Have you ever played that one?
No, I have not. 7th stand user?
It's a JoJo Bizarre Adventure fan game.
Mm-hmm.
And well, yeah, I don't know if you. Well, basically, it gives you a control of C, and depending on what you choose to do, you can even change the outcome of Stardust Crusaders. Which is, and it's actually it is a fun game, but it's a very, very good game in its own. Like it's a JoJo fun game, but it's actually a pretty good game. Like period. It's very good. I would suggest everyone to play it. But so yeah, I see what you mean. And what engine are you switching to actually?
I'm switching to Bakin. Originally, I started in Small Game Builder, but
yes,
I'm moving over to Bakin. It was the choice of that or Godot, and I'm doing other things in Godot, so yeah, I was just like, I'm moving over to Bakin here.
Yeah, Bakin is nice, but I'm waiting. There is the problem that my 3D artist basically they have problems, so they're not working with us anymore at the moment. So I don't have someone who can make the assets for it anymore, and also I'm waiting for them to be a bit more. Bakin is an issue that is it's a bit hard to build stuff like the finished game for certain systems. They added
Yeah.
a Unity thing. It was weird. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little easier for me simply because I'm coming from small game builder. I was like
course.
one of the I would say quote unquote founding members when the Discord was an unofficial Discord and we were just fans of the engine.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tricks that we know how to do. So moving over there and dealing with like the Unity export, but Bakin has come so far. Like the Unity export, you don't even need that to do a lot of the new stuff that you can do it now, and they're constantly updating. Like
Yeah.
my favorite thing, which really solidified the reason why I was moving to Bakin, was the fact the UI layout system that was built in now. So
Yeah,
now you
yeah.
have, you know how like it with RPG Maker or with Renplay,
Oh
you have
god,
to
don't get me started on RPG Maker.
script your own UI and how much of a hassle it is. Like
It's terrible.
Joaquin pretty much said, yeah. Joaquin basically came in and said, you know what, we're gonna have a UI system built in that's pretty drag and drop
Yeah.
friendly. So
Yeah.
sort of like Canva.
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
sense.
Bakin is pretty great. I'm just waiting on them to release the tactical game system. Then I'm gonna start making a serious
Nice.
project with it. But I know what you mean, like getting an engine that you can translate what you learn in another to it. Is the same thing with me and Godot, because I learned RWBY, and RWBY is Python based, and in the last couple of years I learned some pretty good stuff with Python. I can do some pretty gnarly stuff now with Python and RWBY, and a lot of the stuff, because they're both based on Python, translates to Godot's language, GDScript. So everything that I learned by using RWBY, I can use in Godot, and that's pretty good. That's pretty important when choosing an engine. Yeah. Selcor, your scope creep story.
Okay, so I think I'm living it right now. So I kind of guiding myself on development by the cool guide. Like I think
What?
the cool rules. Sorry.
Oh.
Like,
Rule of cool.
couldn't it be cool to
Rule
add
of
this
cool.
or adding this thing?
Ooh,
And then I
cool.
add them. They are cool, but they don't feel very well once you start playing with them. So
Yes,
I'm
yes,
spending
yes.
a lot of time polishing the feel of the game, and
Oh yes.
it's taking way too much. So I'm starting to consider cutting off some things.
Yeah, I feel you. I had something like that in the first JPD as well. Because again, remember, at a certain point, I want to make it like Persona 4. So we had all these events, there is 3 times a day, and then I'm gonna have an event here, and an event there, and then I realized that, oh my god, this is going to take forever. So in the remaster, the pacing of the story and how it goes is gonna be different. There is no more Persona style calendar and stuff that because it was useful. The school year thing was useful for structuring and pacing the story, but I did not have, I don't want to say the patience, but I never got the opportunity to really do with it everything that I need to do, because I always gave priority to extra dates and new characters and everything. So that is something that eventually I had to stop developing, and the remaster is going to be just cut out. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Let's all
Yeah.
just appreciate that Hobo Zone was able to was able to do that persona system in a Veil of Darkness.
Oh yeah, well yeah. Like Veil of Darkness was developed in RPG Maker, and okay, what about okay? Let's go. Okay, next point actually. Let's go to engines. Engines. Let's say for anyone wanting to make a Ruby game, their first Ruby game, their first fan game, anything. Let's go to the engines and we give the thoughts that we have about the engines. Let's start with the big old bloaty elephant in the room. RPG Maker. What are your thoughts about RPG Maker in order? If you experimented with it or if not, it's fine. Just your thoughts. Starting with Ishmaru. Ishmaru, what are your thoughts on RPG Maker as an engine?
Well, first of all, I only dabbled in RPG Maker, at least the official. I can't remember if it was Ace or VX. I actually had more experience with the PS2 RPG Maker 2, I think it was, which I don't actually think counts.
Uh-huh.
It might have been made by a third party. It was the one.
Same
It was
company, same OG company.
okay. It was like
Yeah, same company.
2D,
This is
3D kind of thing. I guess with my experience with that, though, I think RPG Maker is good if you don't have any background in programming. If you just kind of want to get something out, but honestly, it's very limited. It does
Yes.
one very specific kind of JRPG, and it does it well, but it just does one specific kind. If you want to do
Yeah.
something outside of it, it's possible, but it's a lot more difficult than trying to use an engine that's more open to creating content from scratch.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump on that because the thing is, I think that a lot of people don't let's say know or realize let's say the most popular RPG Maker games ever made are not RPGs. They're not JRPGs. For once, they're like horror games or adventure games. And that is because RPG Maker is actually terrible for JRPGs. Because JRPGs in the style of, in the style of Final Fantasy, the old Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, have two things. They have turn-based combat, and their RPG Maker does fine. No issues there. It's limited unless you have plugins from a third party, but it's fine. The issue is with exploration because of its event system. For those who don't know, RPG Maker is based on a square. Basically, you have tiles like in a grid, and on each grid, on each square, you put, the tiles to make up the map, and then you put the characters that move around, interactables, and objects. In a normal engine that a normal person would think of, the engine would only consider those objects when the character interacts with them. Instead, in RPG Maker checks all the tiles of a map all the time, and that slows the game down terribly. It's a blot. It's terrible. It's horrible. I hate RPG Maker. So that's my opinion on it. Selekor?
Okay, so I haven't really used RPG Maker, so I couldn't tell.
Okay. Mimicry?
You and I butt heads over this, but I'm on the other side of the camp. Like, I think RPG Maker is one of the most ideal programs to use. I know I've known RPG Maker since we're talking RPG Maker. Oh my, I'm super old. We're talking RPG Maker 95 when it was pirated software in the US. And it was translated by a German man, a German guy, running all the way up to now where we're at MV Unite and MZ. I think if you want to do and if you're in the Japanese doujinshi scene, that is the engine of choice because you can do so much with that engine. Unfortunately, nearly every H game that you can find is made from RPG Maker in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh God.
any doujinshi that you can find, it's RPG Maker.
Yeah. Any
If you look at
non-sequel.
if you look at what is it, the free Japanese website where there's a Japanese website where people just make doujinshi games of all different sizes. There's a huge list of RPG Maker games of different genres in different ways. I mean, the most recent plugin that they're pushing is the SRPG plugin, and that basically allows you to make Fire Emblem games. Uh, if you
Uh-huh.
if you are a newcomer to RPG Maker, if you're a newcomer to game development, RPG Maker is the game engine for you. If you're not looking, if you wanna hop in and just have a product, have a proof of concept, and you're not really looking to learn too much about syntax and scripting
Uh,
knowledge. So um
mm,
I wouldn't say it's entirely bloatware, because you say that most famous games of RPG Maker aren't RPGs, but that's because not because that you can't make turn-based games with it. It's because there's too much of it. It's a huge sea of, how do you stand out in a sea of RPGs where everything is an RPG? Like you you know, eventually certain things start to bleed together, and in order to stand out, you dodge the whole RPG mold altogether to make something unique, and that's
yeah.
why they stuck out so much. But you have things like the Vampire Diaries on Steam, Vampire Diaries 3, which is a phenomenal RPG Maker game. Um, that works really well, and it costs like what, $5, but it's actually a really good engine. Um, what was the last thing I was trying to say? The plugins really help, and yeah, that's what I meant to say. The plugins really help, and out of all the engines that are on the market right now, I can say, except for Unity, RPG Maker has the biggest support fan base. So if you're lost and you don't know what to do, you can pretty much go anywhere and get resources and help for an RPG Maker game.
Mm,
Whereas Godot, you have to have, a lot of Godot heads around to help you, or you have to be in certain special, groups. So it's not as
mm,
big. The others are not as beginner friendly as RPG Maker is.
yeah.
That's actually a
But
very good point. How much the community around an engine can really like change, like even an engine that may not be rich in features, but sometimes just the community alone can really help get a project off the ground
yeah.
and get you the resources. Because there's certain engines out there that are either so obscure, or sometimes there's kind of like almost like a level of entry to even start, where there's communities where basically it's kind of hard to really get help because they kind of like their own kind of fan groups for that engine. So the
Yeah.
community is actually a very important factor to pay attention to.
There is that. And on that though, I see there is you say that there is beginner friendly because RPG Maker is a so-called visual engine, in the sense that it's all based on stuff that you see on the screen, like a GUI, like a Microsoft Word or Paint kind of software, that you don't need to know code to do stuff with it. If you know it, then you can do more advanced stuff. So that is beginner friendly. I agree with that. The issue that I have with RPG Maker is that after 8 years, I'm no longer a beginner. And so when I started trying to put JPD2 in RPG Maker, that's when I realized the limitations. And RPG Maker has some huge limitation from an engine, from an optimization, and from a performance kind of stuff. If you want to, I'm sorry that there is no way around it. The way that they optimize memory, because from people who are not into game development may not seem like something that matters, but it does matter a lot, especially, and that was my case, if you're doing a game that needs to run on Android, on less powerful systems. In that case, RPG Maker is a terrible choice. And on the...
Depends on which one.
Eh? Oh yes, depends on
Depends
which
on
one.
which one.
Exactly, because there is also the
Because
fact
if it-
that that was my next point. Because yeah, you say exactly that RPG Maker is a huge community, but that's because RPG Maker has been around since the 90s, and he has so many versions, and each one has their favorite version of the engine. Some are better than others, some have function that the others don't have, and there is this debate that is actually very interesting. Like Godot, instead, as you say, it may not be as user-friendly, but considering how little has it been a mainstream engine, and now it's becoming more and more popular and getting more and more attention, it's already have a pretty big community, to the point that he has, there was a fan server about the engine that became the official server for it, and whenever I go there for a question for my game, I always get help pretty much immediately, and there is different levels of help that you can ask, and yeah, that's also it's a pretty important point when you're picking an engine, and yeah, it's like Godot is actually is got my thumbs up for an engine, absolutely. It's also a matter is lightweight.
I feel like Godot is like I'll always endorse Godot. To be perfectly honest, I will always endorse Godot. I feel like Godot, while RPG Maker may be like a monolith, like you can go to any community and find what you need. Especially the diehards that are on RPG Maker 2003. It's like that's there's like, oh, this is where the real skill is, being able to do all these really cool stuff without then Godot,
Breaking down
while
that.
RPG Maker has this monolith of giant communities, Godot kind of has like this knit, very friendly community because they're so dedicated to getting people to use the engine that you know they're more accessible. It's like the difference between calling your mom and pop shop for tech support versus calling Uber for support. Calling Uber, you'll never get an answer. So
What who's Uber in this equation?
in Uber, the Uber would be RPG Maker. Like you
Oh,
you
yes.
troll the forums and you find a lot of information, but you don't get personal support. Whereas
Gotcha.
Godot, you get a lot of personal support.
Yeah. There is also the fact that Godot is a generalist engine. Like you can, is not custom made to do only one thing like RPG Maker. There is that. RPG Maker has all the tools technically you need for making a turn-based classical RPG. Godot instead you can do anything with it, but you need to know a little bit about what you're doing.
And it requires more work because you got to basically do a lot of stuff that a more specialized engine would just take care of for you.
Yeah.
It's short term versus long term. If I were to be honest, like if for RPG Maker, it's a short term gain. Like if you want to make a game in the short term, go with RPG Maker. But if you want to be versatile in the long run, go with Godot.
Yeah. There are other similar engines that I would suggest, like RPG Maker, but that I like a little bit more. There is the one that you mentioned, Baking. Baking is pretty visual as well, and I really like it, despite its core limitations. I'm very interested that when it gets to a point when I'm going to be able to do something that I like with it. And then there is a lot of alternatives now. There is Paper RPG Maker. There is RPG Architect. There is Game Maker to a certain extent. There is a lot. There is a lot. Which one?
Yami.
Yami, exactly. There is a lot
Yami
of
action.
yeah. There is a lot of options if you want a visual kind of engine and one that is specialized for certain stuff, so you don't have to think about too many things. And then there is, of course, let's say the Godot. Let's say Godot is a medium to advanced kind of generalist engine, because it's, in my experience, it's much easier to get into, let's say, Unity or Unreal, which are, high concept, high power, but you need, and also there's also the fact that they're, especially Unreal. Unreal is something that you learn if you want to make the most visually stunning kind of games. But if you're making, don't go to it if you're making a fun game, if it's your first game. Go with something less intimidating. And speaking of code-based, what do you think of RWBY? Have you guys ever tried it?
I have.
I've tried it. I walked away from it very early because of how very bare bones it is initially.
Oh yes, like, it got so many features over the years. It's incredible, especially right now after they got to 8, the versions 8.x. They are wow, like it's like a new world that's opened for MP after 8.x. It's my first engine, and it is a bit code based, but in the sense that it's language. It has a language for how to make it do things. It's not visual. You actually have to write code, but it's a very simplified version of RWBY. And there is a lot of tutorials, and the community is not that big, but there is a lot of diehards that can help you. And if you're looking into making a visual novel, I think that it's worth the learning curve, because it's very small. Like, you can get accessible, you start doing simple things very easily because it's all English based, it's Python based. And then this is what happened to me. I got into it very easily because it's easy, approachable, even though it uses code. And then the more I learned about how to use the code, the more I learned about Python. And it was, honestly, using RWBY was learning about RWBY and how its code works and Python works was so satisfying. There comes a point in the learning curve where you just I don't know if it happened to you guys when making games, game development. Ever happened to you that there is this thing that you're learning, and it seems like you're not getting any better, and then there is a point like overnight, it's like your brain expands and you start being able to do so many different things, powerful things, various things all at once that you never thought you'd be able to understand before. Have you ever had that moment? No?
Yeah, I think I've had that moment before, where you plateau and then you kind of just break through that plateau and
Yeah,
just are
exactly.
able to do stuff up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was so satisfying when it happened to me with Python and RWBY, and it's a good. I suggest it as a starting engine. Honestly, it's a good starting engine for approaching game development and a kind of game design that is code based, but not that complicated yet. It's a good way to dip your toe into writing code. Yeah, let's put it like that. Also, it's the de facto base standard engine for making visual novels nowadays. When you think of like a DDLC, like Doki Doki Literal Club was made in RWBY, for example, just to give one mainstream example. Okay, we've been here an hour and 45 minutes. Let's go into the last panel, and then it's time to slowly start heading towards the end. Let's see. we talk about engines, we talk about the scope, we talk about the genre, I guess. And last thing I want to... Okay, this is an hypothesis. Let's see. I'm gonna do something, give something crazy. Let's say that tomorrow, Rustler Teeth, Viz, Ruby, whatever, Viz decides, hey, we're opening calls. We are accepting proposals because we want to make Ruby video games, and we are accepting ideas from the fan base. What would you propose to them? What kind of game? What will your elevator pitch? Shocked you in silence. Okay, let's go. Wants to go first? I hear someone speaking. Go. Your elevator pitch for a Ruby game to Viz Media.
Honestly, I would pitch a 3D hack and slash, much like Grim
Okay.
Eclipse. However, instead of trying to go more just free combat, I would like to have it completely based more on exploration. So maybe going more Kingdom Hearts and less Dynasty Warriors for me.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah. So basically, I would like to see locations. I know I saw people mention Mistral, and I think I do agree. Mistral is a really big kingdom, really fun to explore.
Yeah.
A kingdom in full, so you can have it take place. But then Volume 4, Volume 5. I immediately thought of Team Ranger, and wandering aimlessly in Mistral, trying to figure out where they're going. And I think that'll be a good starting point, and then you can have quests exactly to hunt down specific monsters and objectives, learn more about the region, see more of things that we didn't get to see, such as the supposed slums that the Faunus lived in and other things like that. So that would be my pitch.
Okay. Selekor, Mimicry, either of you already have your pitch?
Okay, so I'm tempted to propose a fight. Sorry?
No, go. Just go.
Okay, my first thought was to propose a fighting game, but I don't really like fighting games. So I kind of will propose something like Hades, because in Hades you have some exploration elements, you have the characters that are very important, and you can follow a storyline.
All right. Okay, that's a good one. Yes, Mimicry, what's your elevator pitch?
My elevator pitch, I would propose a spectacle fighter in the vein of Tenkaichi, in the vein of DBZ Tenkaichi, or in the vein of Power Stone. It's a low cost.
Power Stone, yes.
Low cost.
My God, Power Stone.
It's a low cost game to make. You can get a lot of characters. You can get a lot of characters that are favorites in there. You don't have to have any story. You can make what if stories and what if scenarios. You can make a lot of content with a limited amount of people, like about at least like 20 people or so, 15 people, or even just 10 fighters would do. And you'd have places from the show, a lot of environmental damage, a lot of multi-tiered stages, and you can have like a tournament mode where at the end, like Mortal Kombat does, like at the end of the tournament mode, you have a snippet of what this character did or what they went on to do. People would be able to play as villains. People would be able to play as heroes, and maybe there'd be a create your own character, create your own fighter to enter, and I think that's just easy money.
Okay, maybe not easy, but I see your point. Okay. Okay. instead for me, if I had to make my own elevator pitch, I'm going to go with, I would pitch a game that I personally would be confident about making. And also because these here in the US, basically they don't, how do you say, they don't have much experience into making games. So I would propose them something that would be relatively low cost, but also quicker to make, to deep their feet, and that I would be able to confidently make. I would tell them, I would tell, hey, what about we make a first-person dungeon crawler? I'm talking about in the style of older school Shin Megami Tensei. There is now that this Toho Dreams of Arcadia game that came out, and it's pretty popular. You know, the ones that use you go forward and backward one step at a time, and you turn a bit of tank control, and everything is first person, but there is visual novel interactions. I'd like to make that kind of game. I'm actually trying to make that kind of game in Godot right now, and just a little spoiler, but I am trying to make that kind of game. Honestly, I've been trying to make that kind of game for years, but I cannot do it in Rampy. I gave up. But I am doing it in Godot, and so like, hey, what about we make this kind of game for Ruby, and you know, maybe you can get me on board. I think, yeah, I don't know, like, I'm sorry, like, if I'm making an elevator pitch for a game, I'm making an elevator pitch for a game that I can be involved in making. All those other ones are great, but I would have no idea where to start. So, dungeon crawler, first person dungeon crawler.
Actually, that's a good
I do want
point.
to.
Like, I thought we're just going with what kind of game in general, but yeah, if I had to be the project lead, as much as that Kingdom Hearts sounds good, I probably wouldn't take that on myself, but stick with what I know.
I think Prox Doug in the chat had a good one. Yeah, a God Eater Monster Hunter type game would be another great pitch.
Yeah, but that but there's they will be a great pitch. But the thing is, when you pitch in those kind of games, you also need to pitch. Okay, and how many years is this going to cost? And how much is it going to cost? Monster Hunter type games take a lot.
I was thinking about, well, not really. I mean, Monster Hunter, what it is now. When I think Monster Hunter, I think classic Monster Hunter, like Monster Hunter Try and back. So
oh my god!
you have like, what is it? 2 or 3 locations that are interconnected, and a list of monsters that you hunt. That's about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, but even that, how long did it how long did that one take to develop?
It's about 2 or 3 years turnover for development. And it was 2.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, I see your point. Yeah, like, yeah, that is a good idea, I guess. But would you be able to spearhead the development of that?
Yes, I would be able to spearhead the development of something like that. It's a lot of resource management sort of things, and
okay.
keeping the scope really small, which is why I picked the Try era and going back, not like the world and all this kind of stuff where they add all these extravagant stuff. Yeah.
Very classic, I get it. Okay, I think we're about running out of time, so let's head into the last part of the panel. Now, guys, it's time to pitch your stuff. So let's go around the table, and each of us can pitch your stuff or game, anything else that we're working on. Look at, first of all, Selekor, you go first. Pitch your stuff. Sell yourself. Elevator pitch for yourself.
Genshin Impact plus RWBY. What else do you want?
Okay, yeah. But I was talking about. Oh, that is what you're working on.
Oh, what do you mean about that?
No,
Pitching
like
my stuff?
yeah, your stuff. Sell yourself. It's time to sell yourself. What are you working on? What do you want people to pay attention to? Where can they find your stuff?
You mean like Twitter or something like that? Or...
Yeah, sure.
I only have a Twitter account, and you can
Okay.
follow me at Celecool1.
All right. Okay. And shall we look forward to anything about your project anytime soon?
Okay. Okay, so right now we are currently working on releasing the first playable version. On our account, we'll be updating the game, some pictures of the gameplay, some videos about what can you expect on the game, some gameplay, which characters will you be able to play, which enemies you'll find in the game, and perhaps some storyline.
Okay. Sounds pretty cool. Interesting. Yes, yes, yes. All right. Mimicry. What about you?
My game, all right. So check out RWBY Crystal. It's a retelling of volumes 1 through 3, but in a very world building manner. It tries to flesh out the entire volumes of 1, 2, and 3 and give you a fully explored version of the show from the perspective of Ruby Rose. It's very final. It's Final Fantasy type. It is Final Fantasy turn-based game, and yeah, you be able to make your choices. Let's say it's Final Fantasy or Persona 3 like game. You'll be able to make your choices, go on missions, and experience things from the point of Ruby. And the type of Ruby you are the choices that you make. So you can play the game
interesting.
and you could. Oh yeah, you can play the game as Ruby from the show, or you can divulge and make your own path and see what happens from there. There you go. Oh, and you can find me at Mimicry Media at itch.io.
All right. Perfect. Ishmaru, your turn. Pitch yourself. What are you working on? Where can we find you?
All right. Well, I go by Delphi Design on Twitter and YouTube. You can find my stuff on Itch as well under Ishmaru. I'm working on RWBY Hunters of Vale. The whole point is 2D, very Ruby oriented combat. The game's complete with a completely new storyline. I kind of dive off of the deep end on Volume 2 and instead explore a world with no Salem, no Ozma, none of that, no maidens, but instead the game is focused specifically on Ruby, her team's post-Beacon graduation, and we have all sorts of fun little things, interesting new Grim, new storyline. There's also combat where Ruby can make modifications to Crescent Rose, so it gets all sorts of new attachments, new modes. Like I said, it's a fighter beat 'em up, so we have combos. And also it's not a game where you can be alone. This game get partners, so you can actually fight alongside with AI controlled characters. Currently, you got all of Team Ruby and Penny, and there's more to come. Also, one more thing too, I have completely new art, completely new voiceovers, and completely original music. So just give it a shot.
All right, thank you very much. Hope that all sounds very interesting. Hope people check it out. And okay, last is me. You can find all of JPD stuff on jpd.itch.io. So we're on itch. And we're also on we're also on Twitter, JPD Official 1. We're on YouTube, JPD Team JPD Official. We have a Discord server, and JPD is a visual novel with JRPG elements. The first one is finished, but we're remastering it. And there is the sequel coming out, JPD2 Adage of Darkness. The first one takes place in the volumes 2 and 3. Then, after a 3 years time skip, JPD2 starts. It's a complete AU. There is so much stuff that is different in the lore and the background. And there is some stuff coming that I can't wait to see people reactions to. So give it a try. And also we're releasing the original soundtrack for the games on streaming services now, if you're interested, little by little. And speaking of music, I'm also working on some musical experiment stuff, like some experimental music with Nilik on a collaboration called RWBY. So you can also check that out. And I think with that, we are going to bid you good night, day, evening, whatever. For me, it's 2 a.m., so I really need to go to sleep. Thank you very much for the stream, guys. That was actually very interesting and very fun discussion to have. Any last words for our viewers, guys?
Check out the RWBY wiki for Fangames, as well as we have a server. You can find the links in the chat. Definitely check it out. And if you guys are interested in games, we have all sorts of resources for getting started.
Yeah. Absolutely. Selekor, Mimicry, anything from your sides?
I just want to
second what
say,
Ishmaru said.
Okay. Okay, Mimicry?
yeah, and
I said I second what Ishmaru said. Yeah, check out the
Okay.
Fangames wiki.
Okay, and Selekor?
yeah, please check out the fun game stuff that the community is doing. There's a lot of talent on it. We hope to grow more, and thanks for your time.
All right, indeed. Thank you so much for listening in. Please check out all the amazing fun stuff, fun games, especially the fun games, because I don't think the fun games in the RWBY community get as much attention as they deserve, considering how many there are and how much effort a lot of them how much effort gets put into some of these fun games. You should definitely check more out, and I hope that maybe this stream has inspired some of you to start making your own. With that, thank you. This has been a Summer of RWBY stream. Check out all the other videos and streams of the event. It lasts until the 15th of July, and we'll see you around. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.